So this is quite a big topic that I'm tackling here, and I don't think I'm gonna quite give it the nuance that it deserves, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. And in order to put us in the right headspace for this, I have a question for you. In your opinion, is the 1980 science fiction classic movie Flash Gordon a good film? It's harder than you think. I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe you immediately went, yeah, no, easy. Is it though? Is it an easy question? Is this a good film? Sit with it. This will be important. Now, the reason I asked that question is because I woke up today with a very sudden and powerful urge to reread this novel, Empire of the Vampire by J. Christoph, a gothic, horror-tinged epic fantasy novel, which I have talked about before in its own dedicated video. The problem was, I no longer had my original copy of the book, and I actually went out and bought this, because the urge to read it was so strong. But if you've seen my original review of this novel, you'll know that I don't think it's a good book. Empire of the Vampire is bad, in my opinion, but it's the kind of bad that I find so entertaining. And it's not entirely bad, but I'll go into it. I just couldn't explain or ignore my sudden urge to read this novel in particular. And speaking of urges, this video is sponsored by Blesa Boutique. Blesa is a by-women company for all things sexual wellness. And their mission is to empower everyone to embrace, explore, and celebrate their own sexuality. And my friends at Blesa are literally sending out free toys or gift cards for vibrators to everyone who signs up to my giveaway. Blesa Boutique's toys are stylish, they are sleek, they are discreet, they are beautifully well designed, and they work so well. For example, one of my personal favorites, the Pebble. The Pebble is ergonomically designed to fit very nicely in your hand. It has a vibration and a suction function, and they are controlled separately, which is fantastic. And this thing is the epitome of small but mighty. It can do a lot in a very short amount of time. Then we have the Air Vibe, which, like the others, comes in a very discreet case. The case has a charging port on the side, and the Air Vibe has dual stimulation, and it's waterproof. If, like me, you're someone who doesn't believe in heaven, the dual stimulation of this will start to make you think otherwise. And finally, we have the Flutter Vibe, which is very similar to the Air Vibe with one huge difference. Instead of one of the toy's two functions being suction, here we have a tiny little tongue. This tongue is it's incredibly effective, and you can speed it up, and it works really well. It works really well. Maybe too well. Having this much power in your hands, it's a big responsibility. And like I said, Blesa Boutique are giving away free toys or gift cards for vibrators to everyone who signs up to my giveaway. Blesa Boutique's toys bring so much fun and variety to the bedroom. Embrace them, enjoy them, they are fantastic toys. So check out the link in the description, sign up to the giveaway, and thank you so much to Blesa Boutique for sponsoring this video. Now, if I had to speculate, I think the reason that I woke up with this intense urge to read a book like Empire of the Vampire is because I am currently doing a lot of self-care, trying to carry myself through some kind of mental health crisis, emotional breakdown, something really, really terrible. I've talked about it recently, and I am still sort of foggy-headed, and that's why I'm a little bit worried that I'm not going to express myself properly in this video. I don't know if I'm going to get my point across properly. I'm going to try and be careful with my words because I'm not really thinking clearly at the moment. I have a perpetually terrible brain, and I am choosing right now to explore a very nuanced topic because it's at the front of my mind. See, like I said, Empire of the Vampire is, in my opinion, not a very good book. And that's my take. This is an enormously popular fantasy book. The third in this trilogy has just come out, and I've seen a lot of excitement around it, and I think that inspired me to want to pick this up again and maybe read the whole trilogy this time. But when I talked about this book several years ago, I had so much fun reading it and reviewing it. Because Empire of the Vampire is bad in all of the most fun ways. This is a schlocky, campy, tongue-in-cheek, and arguably pulpy work of fantasy. It is a masculine power fantasy first and foremost, and I find that stuff very, very cringe. It is a goofy, silly thing, and when I reviewed it, I was laughing at it, and I think I said in that video that I don't think Jay Kristoff is doing any of this in a tongue-in-cheek way. It seemed like he was very earnestly writing a book that he thought was self-serious, and now I'm starting to think, was I very naive in having that approach? When you look at all of the silliness in this book, from character names to dialogue to the events of it, and even down to the intense misogyny and, like I said, masculine power fantasy-ness of it all, can we really say that any of that is self-serious? I kind of view this as an absurd piece of edgelord fiction, but in actual fact, it might be way more self-aware than I ever gave it credit for, and that is part of the reason I want to read it again. I want to kind of reevaluate this book. Which brings me back to Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon is a film that came out in 1980. It is well regarded as being an absurd and hilarious piece of tongue-in-cheek pulp science fiction. The costumes are made of colourful tinfoil. The performances are hammy and silly. The lead actor was a professional American football player. Brian Blessed is laughing through half of his lines in this film. It is horrendously misogynistic, with the women in this film mostly just being sex slaves. And when you watch it, you might think to yourself, is it cheap and bad? Is it cringe? Is it edgy? Is it misogynistic? Or is it tackling all of that with its tongue firmly in its cheek? Is this a self-serious thing that completely fails? Or is it more like Adam West's Batman, a work of very intentionally camp, pulp, hilarious nonsense? I remember being in my late teens and having conversations with people around Adam West's Batman, because at that time The Dark Knight had just come out and everyone was worshipping at the feet of that film, and then they'd go online and hear about Adam West's Batman and think, wow, how pathetic, how silly, how goofy, how cringe, not realizing that it was all tongue-in-cheek, not realizing that bat shark repellent and this line from the film, which is one of the most hilarious, iconic moments from any work of cinema ever.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
All of that is tongue-in-cheek. All of it is not supposed to be serious. It's all like Rocky Horror. It's the pinnacle of camp, pulp, science fiction, superhero, fantasy nonsense. And I love that stuff. I love campy 80s horror movies like Reanimator. And I love Flash Gordon. None of these things are to be taken seriously. They're to be enjoyed in their own unique campy pulpy way. And so is the same true for Empire of the Vampire? Or perhaps is it the case that I was just overly critical of this book and I should go back into it with a more positive mindset? I'm not sure that is it, because if you go back and watch my video, I did really enjoy this book and I gave it credit for having decent world building, really fun and engaging dialogue, but I also said that it was derivative of so many things. The framing device in this book is lifted straight out of both the Kingkiller Chronicles and Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. So much of this book is derivative of other things. It feels like a greatest hits of all of Jay Kristoff's favorite tropes and elements across fantasy, horror, pulp sci-fi, whatever else. How much of that is intentional? And here we bring up the death of the author. Not separating art from the artist, that's different. See, I don't know. I want to kind of implement death of the author when thinking about this. Because if I come at this from a more serious, critical analysis place, then I'm going to hate this book and have fun hating it. But if I embrace the side of me that so loves campy, schlocky, pulpy science fiction and horror, then I love this thing. I love it as a great example of that style and tone of fiction writing and filmmaking, etc. David Lynch did this as well. So many filmmakers and writers have embraced pulpy, schlocky, sword and sorcery fun, and I'm trying to figure out if that's what Jay Kristoff was doing with this book, with the whole series. I have no idea. I need to reread it and find out. And all of that brings me to the big question at the heart of all of this. What is a good book? And what does it mean to enjoy a bad book? I take criticism very seriously. I love being a critic. I trust critics and their opinions and their analysis, etc., etc. People get very hung up on objectivity versus subjectivity and seem to misunderstand those things. I'm not going to go into that now, but criticism in the internet era is a complex and nuanced thing. And so when I look at something like Empire of the Vampire, if I approach it from the angle that it is a work of campy, pulpy fantasy that is tongue-in-cheek and having fun, then what do I do with the fact that it is a kind of cringe, edgy, male power fantasy with a lot of misogyny in it? What am I supposed to do with that? Because the same is true for Flash Gordon. The misogyny is still there. I'm still annoyed by it. As both a woman and a human being, I am annoyed by the misogyny. It's a cliche that sword and sorcery fantasy and pulpy science fiction, these things have so much misogyny in them. Just look at old pulp sci-fi book covers. You don't even need to read them to see the misogyny on display. But do we forgive them for that because it's part of the formula? I don't think so. But does the misogyny make it a bad book? Well, I've said that for many years about Murakami's fiction. Haruki Murakami's novels are disgracefully misogynistic and sexist. They are male power fantasies that weird me out and make me uncomfortable. There's no way to enjoy them or even take them seriously anymore, despite the fact that I was once a pretty big fan of his books. So if I'm critical of his misogyny, I have to be critical of the misogyny that I see in Flash Gordon or Empire of the Vampire, right? Yeah. And here I have to touch on the thing I don't want to touch on, because there's an angry mob sleeping outside my window right now, so I have to say this quietly. Unless you're new to my channel, you probably know that I have made a bit of a name for myself on this channel being critical of romantic fantasy fiction. My heart rate goes up just saying that, and I'm not joking. Romantic fantasy fans are passionate people, and for a long time I have been very critical of the more popular works within that genre for the fact that, in my opinion, they perpetuate patriarchal stereotypes, and again, many of the more popular ones, from my perspective, exist as patriarchal propaganda. But if we put that aside right now, and just quickly look at some of the more popular works within that genre, we have the queen of the entire genre, A Court of Thorns and Roses, a book that I couldn't finish. And not because of the misogyny, not because of the patriarchal conservative propaganda, but because it was boring. Because the world building was flat and shallow. Because it was a work of fantasy without any dedication to actual fantasy world building. Nothing was thought through. And I've said this before, that it feels like standing on a stage surrounded by cardboard cutouts. There is no depth to the world, to the history, to the lore, to the characters. Nothing. It's all very flimsy, it's all very lazy, it's all very dull. And for something that is supposed to be spicy and naughty and smutty, it moves at such a snail's pace. There is no colour or vibrancy at all to that book. And I found the same to be true when I read Twilight. Twilight is strangely boring. I've never read beyond the first book. I've seen all of the films, but the first Twilight novel is so slow and meandering and bland. There are no sharp edges. Everything's been filed away to a dullness. I don't understand how people get so obsessed with Twilight and with The Court of Thorns and Roses, because there is no sharpness and excitement to these books. But when I read Fourth Wing, there are so many issues with that novel, and I've talked about them. But Fourth Wing has really well thought out world building, in spite of the fact that, as someone who lives in Scotland, the author has come under fire for using random words from Scottish Gaelic and not knowing that they were even from Scottish Gaelic, which, my God. But if we put that aside, and we're having to put a lot of things aside, Fourth Wing has very, very engaging narrative beats. It's a really, really fun work of fantasy fiction. The characters are larger than life, they have a kind of pulpiness to them, the dialogue is sharp and dynamic and exciting. Fourth Wing is not boring. Not for a split second. I was entertained from beginning to end. It is tropey, it is cliched. The romance is very conservative, like it is in so many of the more popular romantasy books, but it is fun. The fantasy elements are alive and full of colour and vibrancy. Everything that was lacking in A Court of Thorns and Roses. So of the more popular romantasy books, Fourth Wing is the one that I've enjoyed most, because it's the one that actually has well-considered fantasy world-building elements, and is also a well-written and well-edited book that is at no point boring. It never has the audacity to slow down and be dull. If you're going to write something that is smutty, silly, edgy, romantasy schlock, at least make it fun from beginning to end. Cut away all the dull elements and just have a bombastic, raunchy, exciting work of fiction. That's what you get with that book. And in that way, I forgive Fourth Wing for so many of its issues because I'm having fun with it. It is a good book when you consider how much fun it is. So what does it mean when you consider everything I've just said? What does it mean to enjoy a bad book? Because I do think Fourth Wing is bad, but then what do I mean by that? If Empire of the Vampire, Fourth Wing, Flash Gordon, if all of these things are bad fiction, what makes them so enjoyable? I think it's the fun factor. Empire of the Vampire and Fourth Wing are both books that have decent world building, good pacing, fun, engaging, electric dialogue between characters that are larger than life, campy, bombastic lunatics. That is fun, that is engaging. When you watch Flash Gordon, when you read Empire of the Vampire, you are captivated by the goofiness, the eccentric action scenes. There is colour, there is vibrancy, there is excitement and a frenetic momentum that barrels through the plot and carries you with it. You feel like you're smushed against a boulder that's rolling through a jungle. It's so exciting and fun. You put aside the misogyny, the sexism. You put aside so much of the goofiness and the crassness and the silliness. And what you're left with is an engaging work of bad but wonderfully fun and entertaining fiction. And it's okay to love that stuff. But then when I say it's bad, I do think about the fact that Fourth Wing, as I said before, is the only popular romantasy book I've ever read with actually well-considered lore and history and characters and world building. It is immersive. I believe in this world of dragons and academies and military propaganda, and that is what it is in my opinion. But I believe in it, and I'm having fun with it. Same with Empire of the Vampire. When I watch Flash Gordon, I am captivated by the absurdly cheap but charming visual effects and costume design, and the way that the actors are chewing the scenery. It's the same when I watch something like Fifth Element. So many great sci-fi films from the 80s and 90s, and horror films from those eras. They have a wonderful appreciation for hamming it up and chewing the scenery and making costumes out of tinfoil. They're having fun with the silliness of it. What I want, I think, when considering all of this stuff, is for people to have a critical eye, just one critical eye open when they enjoy this stuff, to at least identify the misogyny. That's often the Achilles heel of so many of these things. The most popular romantasy books are often very misogynistic and patriarchal propaganda. I've said that 1,000 times. And it's fine to enjoy these novels. I've enjoyed a lot of them. I've talked about that before. But just have one eye on the fact that there is misogyny here. Do not fall for the patriarchal propaganda here. Just be aware of it. When you watch Flash Gordon, when you read Empire of the Vampire, enjoy the camp. Enjoy how it's tongue-in-cheek. Enjoy the pulpiness and the goofiness and the silliness. Enjoy the masculine power fantasies of it all. But be aware of the roles of women in these stories, the dialogue that the women have, the way that they are visually presented to us, the costumes that they wear, the way that the cameras view the women versus the men, etc., etc. Just be aware. Call these things out. I think it's important to go into any piece of fiction, even if it's just fun escapism because life is hard and you just want to open a mindless book or watch a mindless film, whatever. Do all of that. But also have that critical eye open and go, yes, Flash Gordon is a misogynistic film, but my god, it's fun. Yes, Empire of the Vampire is a very cringe, edgelordy, masculine power fantasy, but my god, it's fun. Yes, the most popular romantasy books are so often conservative propaganda about women being subservient to men and having their autonomy removed. But my god, I'm having fun reading it. I think that's how I'm feeling, honestly. I'm going to stop because my brain is not very good at the moment, but I wanted to think about this stuff, and I feel like I'm coming closer to a broader understanding of the things that I am very critical of and yet understand the appeal of or even enjoy myself. Quite often I make a snap judgment about something and then don't think about why people like it, and that can be quite naive. That's a failing of mine. But we all have failings. I need to give myself some grace and not be so mean to myself. As people have figured out, I'm a little bit mean to myself. Okay. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you agree, disagree, if you enjoyed this take, if you think I'm right, think I'm wrong, tell me in the comments. Support me on Patreon if you appreciate takes like this one, conversations like this one. Join in the fun, join in the conversation. Thank you so much to my patrons who've been supporting me throughout this very, very tumultuous period in my life. I'm working through it, and doing that would be so much harder without your support. I can never say thank you enough to my patrons. Thank you so much. And thank you to Blesa Boutique for sponsoring this video, and subscribe for books.